One of the things I love about moth orchids is they don't actually need to be repotted very often. If in doubt, don't repot. But how do you know when they really do need some fresh substrate in a bigger pot? The thing to look out for is a mass of roots coming out the top of the pot, and at that point you may be seeing signs that the orchid needs to be repotted. The second thing to check is that what's going on under the surface. So you'll be looking for a mass of roots on the outside of the root ball, so not much substrate is visible at all. And if you're seeing that, it's definitely time to repot. And the most popular form of substrate for orchids is chipped bark like this, and it comes in a few different grades. This chunky form is fine for most orchids. If you've got a tiny orchid like this one though, you'll probably need a finer grade orchid bark. It's just the same, but it's a bit smaller in terms of the pieces, like this. And when it comes to containers, you don't necessarily have to go and buy something brand new. You can buy these clear plastic orchid pots in most garden centres, but have a look through your recycling first, because you may find you've got some clear plastic deli pots, iced coffee cups or similar that you can add some drainage holes to. Just punch some holes in the bottom and there you've got a free orchid pot. Make sure that you water your orchid a few hours before you repot. That makes it much easier for the root ball to slip out of the pot without the roots getting stuck. Now this orchid is planted in moss. It's a fine substrate for orchids, but it's a little bit trickier to keep the moss at the right level of moisture. Moss holds onto more water than bark. And so I'm going to repot this orchid into bark. So this one's already been watered. I'm going to remove the pot and have a look. So there's lots of moss around, which I'm just going to carefully tease away, trying not to damage the roots, so that I'm just left with the bare roots. There is some root damage, so I can trim that off before I repot. It's just worth taking your time with this job and being really careful, because you don't want to damage the roots of the orchid. They are quite sturdy, but it's easy to snap one off. So looking at the roots, there is a bit of damage here, so I'm going to remove that with a pair of snips that I've already sterilised by running them under naked flame, just to make sure that they are nice and clean. Orchids can carry viruses, so always sterilise your equipment when you're moving from orchid to orchid. So I'm going to take off this root as well, which is not looking so healthy, and a couple here, and leave the really healthy roots there to grow on. And now the orchid can go into its new pot, and trying to make sure that the level that it was at with the substrate is the same as it was before. I'm using this fine orchid bark this time because it's quite a small orchid and the roots are quite small. So I'm just going to start adding the substrate, and they're very forgiving orchids. You can move them around as you work, trying to make sure that the substrate is going in and that the orchid is in the center. So just top up the bark until it's just shy of the top of the pot and the orchid is well supported and is standing as you want it to stand. And then it's ready to go back to its usual spot. The last thing you need to do is make sure you give it a good drink, make sure it's been watered so that those roots are moist again.